Alright, I'm going to show you guys how to make one of these element stones. Everything you see here is what you need to assemble a single stone. So, at the sides of the stone, obviously, we're doing the water stone. These are all the same, it's just what the back looks like. These three pieces here are what I call the pusher. These go inside the stone to push the little wedges out the sides. We've got the top here, which has the brown on one side and black on the other. And then this is the bottom with the 6 holes in the center of it. You got your SAO connector that goes on the bottom piece. This is a pogo pin. It's a little springy pin that makes the mechanism work. We've got the blue LEDs and the resistors that we need for this board. This is a little 3D printed jig to help you align these pieces that go in the middle and a rubber band to hold that together. So first we're going to do the LEDs and resistors. So we'll start with the LEDs. Now on the top of this board, see if I can get this to focus. So some things to note here. On each of the LEDs there is a little triangle that points to one side of the LED pads. Now on the LEDs themselves there are little green marks on the back of them that show which way they go. Now these LEDs are side mounted LEDs, which means that the light goes out the side of it rather than the top. See if I can get a single one of these out. Alright, see if we can get that in focus maybe. It's really hard to see. That's the side of the LED. And on the back, there's a green line towards one side of it. And that's what we're trying to find and line up with the arrow on the top board. Okay, so get all 3 LEDs out and solder them onto this top board. Now these LEDs can be a little tricky because the side of them is round, so if you don't grab them right in the middle they like to fly out of your tweezers. You got to be kind of careful. So, go back and put solder on the other sides. And that's the complete top board. See if I can. So, not sure if you can see the little green line on that LED on the left side. Okay, now we'll go back and solder the bottom board. Now on the bottom board there are, on the silk screen it tells you which resistors are needed for each different type of stone. So we're doing the water stone, which is this column here. So R1 is 10 ohms, R2 is 3.9K, and R3 is 6.2K. So the 10 ohm resistor is the only one in the pack that doesn't have a color. The rest are all colored on the edges. So this one is orange, which is the 6.2K, and This one is pink, which is the 3.9K. So those are the, sorry, this one's the 10, it's not colored. It's also the only single resistor in your kit. So those are the ones we're going to put on here. For the other stones, they're all labeled there, and I will put down in the description what colors mean what. So we'll solder those resistors on. Okay, so now we've got the 3 resistors on there. Now we can solder the SAO connector. Now, on this, the silkscreen outline there shows that it's missing there. There is a key on this. You kind of see there's a missing chunk. You need to line those up so that it'll go onto the board properly. So, put that on there, flip it over. Do your best here to get the connector lined up and centered. You can kind of look at the holes and see if the pins are right in the center of the holes, because if this is twisted, then your stone is going to be twisted when it's on the board. Okay, that's that all done. So now we're going to assemble what I call the pusher assembly that goes in the middle. Now, this board and the top board, they have different sides here. This one has no solder points, and the back of this one has none. You want to make sure when you put these together that the solder points are all touching each other. So these slot into each other like this. You go to 90-degree angle. And then the tops of these little nubbins go into the top board here. Now, 2 of them are sideways and the other one is vertical. So you got to get this the right orientation to get these to go together. Once you've got that together, that's where this little 3D printed jig comes in. So put these on the back here, and that will hold them in the correct spacing. And now put the rubber band on. There's a little slot on the back of the 3D printed part. The rubber band in there. Stretch it around the top piece. This will hold this all together and in place while you solder it. So one thing I like to do is here on these solder joints, make sure they're actually lined up, because this whole thing can rock a little bit back and forth. So make sure those are lined up straight before you solder it. So it doesn't take a whole lot of solder to do this, but you do have to be touching both sides with your soldering iron to get it to go. So now go through and hit all of the solder joints. So once you've got them all done, pull this off and use that on the next one. So we've got that ready. Next thing we're going to do is take one of these side pieces and we're going to attach the top board to it. Now on this top board, orientation matters here. Not only in the obvious way that the brown side needs to be up, but you can see down at on this side there's a little arrow and it says this side first. You need to solder this side to your first side board. You need to do this side first, and what that allows you to do is those are the pads where the power actually comes through for the LEDs, so you'll be able to test this before it's fully enclosed to make sure your LEDs work properly. So soldering this can be a bit of a trick because you need to get it lined up with the top and pointing straight up and down. So what I like to do is find something to push it against that I know is straight. You can use anything. If you've got a nice strong box or some piece of equipment or anything that's got a nice flat vertical surface. So rummaged around in my junk drawer and found an old optical drive. It's junk now, we don't use those anymore. So I'm just going to push the top of that board up like that. Take my board, make sure I got the arrow in the right place, and I can push this up next to it and know that it's going to be vertical. Now make sure it's lined up side to side and then solder those joints. After you've done that, make sure to check alignment, make sure it looks good, make sure it's vertical. You can go ahead and solder the second joint on there. Now if you notice here, I didn't gob the solder on. It's only connected on a little bit on this side and a little bit on that side. That's okay. You don't have to fill the entire joint with tons of solder. It only has to hold it on there. So now that we've got that, you'll want to take your bottom board and put the pusher assembly through it. Actually, almost skipped a step here. The springy push, or the pogo pin, needs to go in this pusher assembly before we put this together. So you take it and the gold side, the non-springy side, goes down through the top triangle board. Now, these are a pretty snug fit, but it should go through. Sometimes it helps to gently push against the table, and you want to push it a little bit further than that so the bottom of it actually touches this board here. Okay, so that should be touching there, and then you'll want to put a little bit of solder here on this top joint. Again, doesn't take a crazy amount of solder, just enough to hold it in there. Now, put it through your bottom board here. And we'll set it on here. And on this bottom board, you'll want to align it with the pads that are on the board. So, see if I can a little better view here. So, the pads that are on there, you want this board right up against those pads, right there, and so they're lined up. Well, that looks pretty good. I'm going to solder the other side. So, this is the point where it can be tested. So, what you'll want to do is grab your badge, turn it on, and you'll want to take it out of the bling mode. So push the mode button on the back, so it'll be off, right? Now the LEDs on these boards will light up on any slot, right? So we can see that the LEDs work. What this doesn't show us is if all the resistors are soldered properly and the right values. So this being the water stone goes in this corner, and when you put it on, if the resistors are right, you'll see that the first LED of that color down below turns on. So that'll be true with the other stones. When they're in the right positions, that first one will turn on. So this one works, the resistors are right, all the LEDs work. So we can go ahead and solder the rest of this together. So what you want to do is take a second side and turn this over onto it. And this is where lighting is not going to play nice here. So what you'll want to do is solder the bottom of this one first. So get the side lined up, right where you want it. And then we're going to solder the bottom of this and leave the top for now. So once you've got the first little bit tacked down, and you can flip it up on its edge and reach your soldering iron in there and solder that. Alright. So the reason we leave this top part open a bit is so we can get the wedges down in there before we tie it all up. So now I'm going to grab our wedges, and it's easiest to start with this, the one on the right side here. And all we're going to do is pull this part out a little bit and put this down in there. Now the wedges go in this orientation, so there's a little notch at the bottom that goes towards the outside of the stone. So I'm just going to reach in and set that, get it onto the little hook there, and now I'm going to push it in here. Now it helps sometimes to grab your tweezers and kind of help it slide right into that little groove on the side, and just push it through like that. And now what you want to do is push up so that the bottom edge of that lip goes down through this side and it's sitting flush. So now take the next one, put it through the side here, and you kind of want to pull out on this inner part and slide this stone, or this wedge, down over the little lip in there, and that'll hold that one in. So now you've got two of your wedges in there. So make sure they're flush on the outside, not stuck inside there all weird. So at this point you can actually push down on the bottom and test that it works. So now we're going to solder the top of this one. And here again, sometimes they can be a little bit off, boards shift a little. The solder also, when it cools, tends to pull like the top board off a little sideways there. So you can kind of force it over a little bit. It's totally up to you on how you want to do this. What you can do is throw some solder on there first, the way it is, and then you can remelt the solder and pull it into place. So now we've got our edges lined up, there's no gap there. Okay, so this one's a little bit difficult to get to that back corner, so you can either leave it like it is, and it holds in there pretty good, it's not going anywhere, or you can reach in there with a soldering iron. Just try to be careful not to hit these wedges. So for the last side, take your last wedge and slide it over the little hook. Then you're going to put this side on and get it lined up. Take your rubber band, put it around it, and just hold it all in place. So now all we've got to do is solder that last bottom edge and we'll be done. And when you're doing this, try to be careful and not hit your SAO connector with your soldering iron. They do melt. So once you've got those 2 points soldered, take your rubber band off. That's it, it's done. That's a completed stone. So do that 3 more times with the other ones and you'll have a complete set. Thanks for watching and thanks for supporting us and purchasing our badge. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My contact info is down in the description. Thanks.